Hello friends and family who are watching this. I want to excuse all of my hair shenanigans. I'm going to actually cut it today back to short. I've been debating on going long or short, but I think I'm going to go back to just above my shoulder length instead of like super long, because that'll take a couple years and ain't nobody got time for that. In this video, I just wanted to jump on and share a little piece of my heart about some things that I'm processing. So a lot of times, like, for me personally, it's so easy to just kind of plaster on like the good things that are happening, and like that's what I want to share, because everybody has their own problems and I sometimes feel really bad about talking about things that I'm struggling with. But I think about some of my favorite YouTubers that have been like the most helpful in my own transformation as a person, and that have kind of like, they feel like friends sometimes. So I wanted to share a little bit about what I'm learning about forgiveness. Just the last couple of days, I subscribed recently to The Daily Good. It's a newsletter from The Good Trade, which is an organization that kind of just promotes like a lifestyle that reflects a lot of minimalism, but also just like boiling things down to the simplicity of life and taking moments to pause and see beautiful moments. So it's been really great. They send me an email daily. I signed up for that. And it's just like a short, like a couple seconds of encouragement. They have articles you could read, music to listen to, different things to reflect on. But they always start out with this quote from Amy Ann Cadwell, which is the co-founder of The Good Trade. And yesterday's email was so good. This one was too, but like I've kind of been sitting on and meditating on what this says, and it really just hit me super hard. So I'm going to read it to you. It says, "If in this moment all of your resident fears and stored away sorrows are flooding out, you're not alone in this. May love like a weighted blanket unfold over each of us. We are in this together." And like for me, I like have kind of taken a couple of weeks to like really let COVID hit me, like in terms of the implications that it has on our lives, and it really has hit me truly, finally. And like there's this part of like natural grief that I really was fighting against experiencing, because I felt like it was weak, if I'm really honest. And so I finally have like been embracing that, but also like I'm personally going through a ton of changes in my life yet again, and it's been stressful, and I've been asking God a lot of big why questions and what next questions, and how come you haven't told me yet, God, and just being refrustrated in a lot of ways, because I want the answers now, and there's so many external things in my life that feel uncertain and shaking, and I have to like really reel it in and be like, okay, God, you see all of these things that are bugging me, all these things that I want solved and fixed and answers to, and I'm so overwhelmed. I feel way over my head in all of this, and it's hard because usually I could go out to lunch with a friend or something and kind of like have more like in-person support, and I've had to rely on social media for a lot of that, with like friends and family and Zoom calls and such. So this just hit me so hard. Like, if all the resident fears and stored away sorrows are flooding out, you're not alone. May love like a weighted blanket unfold over each of us. And it just reminded me, like, there are things in my own heart, and like God knows this, but there are things in my own spirit and soul and body and being, and like things that I experienced growing up that like are not completely solved. And like some of them I've worked on in years past and have realized that is good enough for right now, and there are pieces of that that are going to come up later, and that's often how life is, right? Like sometimes we'll like maybe forgive, you know, a friend or a parent for something that happened, or like maybe like for me personally, I'm going to take like a moment and be vulnerable here, but like you know, the way that my parents handled conflict is something that like was a very stressful experience for me as a kid growing up, and they didn't mean that by any means. They were just trying to figure out their own situation, but being in that household as they did that was really stressful for me. And so I'm kind of struggling through learning how to like have healthy conflict and discuss things without having to be afraid of how the other person's going to react, and instead allowing them that space and that honor and that respect to handle it how they will, but also prayerfully, expose those issues that are personally weighing me down, and knowing that that's not selfish to share how things are affecting me and how people that I love in my life can better love me, because I know that that's their goal and I want to love them better too, and part of that is having that open communication. So anyway, that has been like a specific resident fear that has been kind of locked up inside of my own life. And I just started a devotional, another one by Brittany Rust. I'm kind of just reading all the ones that she has on YouVersion. She's a good friend and really incredible writer, very pragmatic in how she applies exegetically like what the Bible has to say about things, which I super appreciate. And so I just started the one about conflict that she has. It's a 7-day free YouVersion Bible study that you can do, and it takes like 2 or 3 minutes every day. But the first one has a verse, and I had it already highlighted, so when it came up in my YouVersion Bible app, like I was like, I know this one, and it just like has been one that has sat and been like a salve to my soul so many times over and over. And so I'm going to read Colossians 3:12 verses chapter 3 verses 12 through 15. It's been a morning, let me tell you. Oh my gosh, I also like spilled water everywhere this morning when I came to sit on my couch to start working. And anyway, some days I've got it all, my ducks in a row, and we're just nailing it, and other days I am the hot mess express, and you just gotta get you some Jesus in all those days. But Colossians 3 verses 12 through 15 says that, put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so that you must also forgive. And above all of these, put on love, which binds together everything in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in one body, and be thankful. And like there's so much in that I feel like personally today I needed. And like we're called like to let peace rule in our hearts. And I like had been working all morning. It's like noon now, and it's snowing outside and cold, and it makes me miss California. And I like honestly, like I usually love having the window shades open so I can see outside and like feel like I'm not trapped indoors, but I like shut them today because my heart was so heavy. And I like took a minute and like saw a friend post something about what she's grateful for on Instagram, and I was like, this is why like I try to like include that in my feed, because it's a reminder to me and to my own heart when I'm feeling kind of weak and weary, like be grateful, Melissa, like there's so much good. And so I like stepped outside into the snow out on my little deck and just let it be quiet. And like it's snowing so hard out there. It's like a soft snow, but there's so much of it that I can't even see like past my balcony. And I just like felt the soft quietness and the like pure white bright light that is when it snows, which I grew up in California, so like I don't think that will ever be something I take for granted. It's always something that I'm in awe of. But yeah, it just kind of like was that like weighted blanket that covered me with love and reminded me like, let the peace of Christ rule in my heart, and approach every situation with like this willingness to forgive and to have compassionate hearts, humility, kindness, meekness, patience, bearing with one another, and forgiving one another, so we can live in perfect harmony, and being thankful as we put on love. And like, those things in the past that I, didn't realize had like become like tags on my soul, like just binding pieces of my heart, and things that I just felt like were normal, like God's kind of shedding light on it. Is like, Melissa, you need to like forgive in those areas. Like you need to forgive people in your past that like set an example that caused you pain. And like God is big enough to show us a way of compassion. And like, Easter just happened, and he's big enough to like lay it all out there to love and to forgive. And so like I need to be willing to do that too, and like that's where my healing is going to begin. And like it's laying that down, it's understanding I feel all these things and they are overwhelming and sometimes scary to acknowledge, and it'd be easier to just shove it down, it feels like. But God's not calling us to shove things down in our lives anymore. He's calling us to walk in freedom, and to do that we have to assess what's really going on in our life and let Him and let the Holy Spirit guide what to look at and how to navigate through that, because otherwise shoving it down is just gonna it's just gonna bind those things even tighter to our heart, and like shove it into darkness, which isn't gonna help it heal or grow. So I'm just really challenged, and I'm just praying like this is a blessing